This is about the horrors of the black booklet. A gloss black booklet is very intolerant to scratches and dust and all that because of how reflective it is. This booklet is fresh out of the wrapper, but I don't know if you can see, but there's some scratches here in the paper already. And then you turn it over and there's like some little dust, I guess maybe like some little hairs. And so you never know. I mean, these aren't, they might be made in a clean room, but who knows? They could sit on shelves, and they're probably not made in a clean room since there's paper being cut and all that. So you get a lot of lint and all that. So the first thing to do is to save your time later. Before you scan this, you need to clean it up really well. And so for that, I keep a towel present. And normally I wouldn't do this over the scanning bed, but for this to be in the view of the camera I am. But the point of this, the towel, is to physically kind of break things loose off the paper. And then once the stuff is loose on there, you come in with some air. And then of course you'll want to make sure that your the scanning bed is also clean, and look for fingerprints and all that kind of stuff. And then also with fingerprints, the other thing is to watch your fingers. Before you are handling something like this, you might want to just use some dish soap or something to get the oil out of your fingerprints, out of the pores and stuff. And then when you handle it, always handle it, try to touch it by the sides so that you're not actually touching the area that's going to get scanned, because the fingerprints, you might not be able to see them now, but when you are looking at them in high resolution on the computer, you can see the outline of a fingerprint. So here we're gonna lay it down, and I'm gonna use the my black background for this, as opposed to using a white background. So we'll put that on there, and then I'll put my weights on either side of the crease, and we'll give it a scan. As far as descreening, there's probably not too much. It's just a little bit here on these little strands. Let's see. All right, this might be a little hard for the descreen filter to catch. Let's see. Okay, I got it. So we'll let that go. It'll take a couple minutes. All right, so finished there. And everything looks okay. And so the goal here is we want to get this to be pretty dark, solid black. We don't want all this dust in here. And then the scratches. Let's see if those showed up at all. Yeah. So there's one scratch there. I think that one we're going to have to manually remove that one. And the dust isn't too bad. So here, that's a fingerprint right there. That guy. So that's why you don't want to touch it too much, because then you gotta clean those up. but we can probably clean that up pretty with one action. First, let's crop out the other stuff. So I do one corner, and then I come up here and do the opposite corner. All right, so I cropped it down to size. And then for this scratch, we'll use the clone stamp. Way too big. I'm just using the bracket keys, the left and right bracket keys as a shortcut. And then we'll set that up here. My hardness was a little light there. I can get rid of some detail. Let's see. Yeah, it's a little nicer looking. Okay. And then what I did was I lined it up. So let me just go back here. So what I did is I lined this up so that when I cross over this strand, it'll keep it even. Okay. There we go. So we got the big scratch out of there. And then now what we're going to do is get the wand, the flood select, and I'm going to add this. Yeah, there's a lot to select here. It's going to select just about everything. All right. So it looks for the borders, and then I guess it was able to cross through the crease here and get into the next section. That's okay. Now we're going to go to select, and we're going to shrink it. At 1200 dpi, probably -8 for the pixels is a good amount. All right, so now we're going to say add. We can either do a square, marquee, or we could do the brush. And make sure you say add, and then just come in here and add these random ones. And then when you shrank it shrank it along the border too. So we'll have to fix that. And then I'm going to use the bracket keys to just shrink the selection down. There's a little guy right there. Okay, and then to get the border back, I did the marquee and then make sure it's add. And then I'm just getting the border, because when I shrank it, see what happens. See, it pulled it in. It shrank it from the border as well. So it ended up, you'll end up not filling out the very edges. It's too big. So you can see where the selection is as I'm adding this cube. Go there. And then it looks like there's just a little bit of randomness in there. I did a subtract. Okay. I think I'm gonna deselect a little bit more. Let me do 4 here. It's just getting a little too close to these strands. Okay, that looks pretty good, but we'll have to do this again. All right, now here's how we can clean this up really quick. Get the eyedropper, set the radius to something kind of big, 65 by 65. And so now, and then sample, don't sample over here where the color is changing. Just get the nice good area of the black that we are. And then sometimes it doesn't always make the color active. So you can click on it again and then add a new layer and apply. All right. I'm gonna deselect the layer there. And so some of this needs to be cleaned up a little bit. So you can see, I'm just using the eraser just on these little areas. And so what that's doing is just erase. If I go here, so see, this is what we got with, so that's probably like this C right here. Just clean that up just a little bit. Okay, that. I'm gonna add that back, make sure I'm on that top layer, make sure I'm that right color, and then just fill that little dot in. Okay, let's see, so that looks good. Oh yeah, that looks pretty terrible. Oh no, that's the centerfold, so that's okay. We'll fix that here in a minute. Okay, all that looks good. Our death strandings look good. This looks pretty good. Maybe fill in that S. Yeah, we're on the paintbrush, and then squeeze that in. Okay. Now, so what we did was we just flooded this whole area, and if I turn this off, you see now you've got, here's all those dust particles, but this just pretty much covers it off. Now, right now we've got hard borders here, and what we want to do is just feather it so it looks a little nicer. And so what I did down here, there's this FX, the layer effects, and I've got the pixel layer, the top layer that I flooded with the black. And I'm going to click that, and on Gaussian blur, I'm going to go to about 0.8. And see what it did was it feathered out the edges here. If I turn it off real quick, see, that's a real hard step between the alpha and then the color. So there we go. So that fills that. And then if I reactivate it, the bottom layer looks really good. And then now I'm going to add a levels on top of that. So by putting it on top, it affects all of the layers underneath it. And then here is where I can pull down the black. Okay. First, actually, let me clean up this crease here. Let's see. I'm going to get the eraser, make this a little bigger. Now, naturally, you probably don't want too much of this weird rainbow effect. So if I come back, I'm going to get the paintbrush again. Okay, so I'm using a very low hardness here, not low, halfway. And what that does is that out towards the end of the circle, you see how it fades out. So this will make the crease obvious that there's a crease there, but we're going to cover up that rainbow effect. There's the staple. I mean, you could just come here and just completely black out the crease if you don't like creases. I like the creases because they show where the the folding of the booklet is part of the presentation. So I like to preserve the visual markers that show how the medium was originally displayed or presented. But you don't want it to be like all gross at the same time. Okay. So what's happening here, the reason that it can't fill that top there is because that effects is being applied to it, the Gaussian blur. So what you can do is add another layer. And so see now this effects is on this layer down here. So now there's not going to be any effects. And now you can come in and just fill the top here. Just run over it real quick. And if I show you what's happening here, so I just disabled the original background, and now you've got this. This is the layer that has the letters and all that, and then you see because we did the Gaussian blur, it's kind of faded out the edges here, and so you can't paint it. I am painting it right now, but as I'm painting it, it's applying the blur, which just keeps it faded out on the very edge. So you got to go to a different layer that doesn't have that the effect on it, and then from there you can fill all that in. And then, I mean, if you wanted to be quick about this, you could also just use, like, make a big block or something, or highlight an area. So there's always lots of ways to do the same thing. Okay, and then just I'm just coming through here and cleaning up where this, because of the hardness, I didn't have a real big hardness, so it also was light on the other side of the circle. Okay. So now if we turn that back on, now we got the fold, and so now I will put a levels on top of that, and we will turn up the RGB or the black to make it black, and then we can also turn up the white just to make sure it's got the contrast with the black. All right, see, that looks pretty good. It's very solid black, but it still has all of the fine details everywhere. Okay, so now what I like to do is, since I scan this at 1200 DPI, right now it's at 55, 58 height. So what I'm going to do, let's see, I'm going to collapse all of this. You can do, instead of collapsing, you can do merge visible, and that will give you one layer on top as all of these layers combined. All right, so that one layer is all of this combined. What I'm going to do is take that, just that part, copy it, and then new from clipboard, and that gives me this, gives me just that. And then I'm going to resize it and to get the DPI back to 1200. 96 is just the default that it does. And then I needed to make sure to turn off that resample, because then it won't change the pixels. So if I go back, let me go back. See, if I type 1200 here, you see how it jacks up these pixel numbers because it scaled everything. But if you turn that off, it will change the DPI, but it just changes it as a setting. It doesn't actually scale anything. So there we go. So we'll resize, and then what do we got here? 5647 width by 55, 58. Okay. So see this over here? I saw that when I pasted it in, but you don't have to worry about it, because if you type in 5558 to bring the width into to be square with the height, you see it shrunk it in. I'll apply and see it cropped off that end there. All right, now here, what I do is I change this to 3000. And so I like to include a JPEG cover of 3000. The file size is very small here because it's all black, and JPEG is very efficient at all black. So normally, if this was like a real picture of something, like like some anime background or whatever, like just a normal picture, this estimated file size would be closer to like 2.5 megs or 2 megs at this compression and this pixel dimension. So we're going to say export to Death Stranding. Cover is 3000 by 3000. Save. And then all you got to do is go down to 600, put it in half, and that drops it down to 1500 by 1500. And that is what I like to use for the actual just cover. Okay. So there we go. Got a real nice looking cover image that retained all the quality. And now we can go back to this and resize it down to 600 DPI for archive purposes. And we will export that one as a PNG. So this is booklet front back. All right, so there you go. That's how you can get these very nice black images that are completely just solid black, and you don't have to go through and individually get rid of the dust and all that kind of stuff. Remember, when you go to scan the next page, be careful about how you pick it up. You don't want to get the oil on there, so try to just grab it by the edges and then like that. You don't want to touch it. You can touch it like with your backside and stuff like that, because you don't normally get oils on the backside of your fingers, you know, if you're a clean person, I guess. And then it doesn't have the fingerprint to actually leave a print in there. So again, you know, these things, even though they might be fresh out of the package, they can sit in factories for a while, and who knows how clean the factory is that these things run through. So just always give it a nice quick little brush when you go to do the next page. What did this one look like? Let's see how this one works out. So I'll just crop it. I like to do it in paint.net because it's just like 2 steps to do this, and it's very fast. Because it's a pretty simple piece of hardware. The other Affinity Photo is more complicated, so to do this kind of stuff is more steps. And now we'll open that Affinity Photo. Okay. So this one worked out pretty well. Not too much dust. You know, this is really the important part of why you want to clean it beforehand, because that way you don't have to come in and fix all this stuff afterwards. So we'll do the Descreen first. All right, we'll let that go for a couple minutes. Okay, so that finished up. And now we can crop this in. Just start up here at this corner and then go down to the opposite corner. Okay, apply. And then there's not too much here. We'll stamp these out. Shrink the selector down. That's Alt. And then just looking for all these problems. So in this case, getting this kind of stuff out. So I'm gonna, since this is on a line here, I'm gonna follow that line. There we go. And then the hardness, I'm going to pull down just a little bit. Okay. Okay, so here we've got some color transitions that we got to watch for. Let's go around that. Oops. Shrink that down just a little bit. Okay, then we got a very faint transition there. And then there's another one here. So this is where it gets a little more complicated, trying to get these transitions to look natural. Yeah, that one doesn't look great. Okay. It's just never ends sometimes. Let's see, can we grab that from somewhere else? Maybe here? And then to get the black, let's see, I think, can we do this one maybe? It's a little too dark or a little too bright. Let's see, this might work. Too bright. Yeah, that looks pretty good. There we go. That's not too bad. And then this little corner, just all right. I think that's pretty good. So we worked down that crease pretty good, got rid of the reflection. A lot of this just looking at it kind of roughly. Some of these things you can just clean up quickly, just using the duplication here. Okay, and so these kind of things here, you just want to follow the shape. So I'm gonna click like right here and then try to line that up. So that way you get a nice transition. So click on that edge. There we go. All right. A lot of this just becomes nitpicking at some point. You just gotta give it up. Okay, and then what we do is we'll add I have these presets to just add back the darkness and bring up the brightness. And then that kind of, sometimes that'll make some of these other spots show up a lot more. Make sure after you click that, because right now it's on the levels adjustments, go back to the background and then get rid of some of these spots that might show up. Okay, and then we're going to resize that to 600. That'll cut the resolution in half. That's good enough for archiving. So export that as a PNG. This is booklet 01 to 02. And there you go. That's just how you go through with these dark images. Now, one thing, if I go back over here to this thing, you remember we had that fingerprint, but oh, let me get rid of the visible. So the fingerprint was right here, this fingerprint, but because we flooded the whole image, it just gets covered up, so you don't have to worry about it. Just one extra thing. This one was something new for me. This is a 2-disc set, and so I was sitting here trying to figure out how to get this disc out of here, and then it turned out it opens from this side. I've not seen that before. I had to look here on the sides and see where the pivot point was, and I didn't see one around. Normally there's one right around here, but I saw that little guy right there. Guess they're always trying to spice it up a little bit.